Hi. So yeah, I was really excited when Laura asked if I would do some pickling class and. What are you doing? Pickling. No. We're pickling in ball canning jars. We're not playing pickleball. Anyway, Mary has agreed to be my lovely assistant tonight, and we're going to be doing some pickling recipes. Ask if they can hear you. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Sure can.
Sure can. I've got us on us as well, so there's two different views. There we go. She's ready now. I'm ready. So Mary's gonna give you, we do want to give a disclaimer, Mary.
Our disclaimer is we are not professionals in this venue. We both have a lot of experience canning with our families, with our parents. We both grew up doing a lot of canning. My mom was first generation Italian American, and you know, we did a lot of canning of tomatoes and jams and jellies, and then just started getting into it on our own, which we really enjoy. And there's a lot obviously that you can learn over the internet. You can watch YouTube videos now, which is great. So it was nice to have that foundation and then kind of start doing that on our own as we had our own garden and things like that. So so if we can do it, anybody can do it. There's a lot of basic principles that are super important related to food safety and different tools that you definitely will need. But it's a great, it's a great hobby. It's a great way to use fresh produce, to have fresh food year round. So really anybody can do it. So we're going to do some really basic stuff tonight. Do you want to talk about the chat?
Oh yeah, so we can see you guys and everything, but obviously we can't really reach to do stuff. So we're gonna call on, we don't know who else on right now. Are Sonia and John here? Chris, are you here?
Chris is here.
Chris, hey, we're gonna put you on duty that if anybody wants anything in the chat or raises their hand, if you would read the question in the chat or the comment, like just interject and say, hey, we have a comment. Or if someone raises their hand, you would say, say their name, like, hey, Karen has a question, and then Karen can unmute and ask the question. Because we can't really function with the computers at the same time.
Okay. Hopefully I'll see it. I am very new to Zoom, but if I see it, I will say something.
Okay.
And we know a lot of people, a lot of you out there do a lot of canning and probably have a lot more experience than us. So also please use the chat function, share a favorite recipe, share a tip. Anything like that is really fun. Because again, this is such, you can do so much in the world of canning and pickling and fermenting. So if you've done something you want to pass along to everybody, that's great. One of the really important things that we wanted to mention is, you don't need a ton of tools. You don't need a ton of space. We have a really small house. So we do a lot of what, is referred to as small batch canning. So, you can do that with just a few canning jars, with smaller pots. But generally, your basic materials are things that help keep you safe and help manage the jars in and out of the hot water. A large enough jar or a large enough pot to be able to do that depending on which batch. You need a great apron like this one that I sewed in home ec in 8th grade. And I sewed a pocket in because I knew that eventually we'd have cell phones. And so you want to keep your cell phone.
1981, and she knew.
Ahead of my time. Well, this is my homemade apron. So you need one of
And mine is our Hanukkah party. It's Team Latkes, and it says, the greatest team honor, greatest.
Yeah, get it?
It's not misspelled.
Thank you. Thank you. We've got some people in the studio here, so they're gonna fill it. So those two are really important, sharp knives, things like that to have. And one of the first things we would tell you if you're doing hot pack canning, which is where you fill your jars and you boil them and process them, is start your water early. So we're going to move around a little bit. We're on a computer camera, so Mara's going to help us with that. And
Thank you, Mara.
close your eyes if we're moving the camera around, but you might get a little bit dizzy. So We have a couple different workstations, but we started our water already because when you have a larger pot, you want to have that ready to go when you're ready to get the jars in.
Yeah, it needs to be at a rolling boil.
Yeah, so
I do want to
Go ahead.
also say that I put together a Word document that has the recipe and the tips and all of that in it. So what we can do is I'll email that to everybody who participates as long as I have the emails. So you don't have to write all this stuff down. You know, if you want to write something down, write down something you can pick on me about later.
For sure. So one of the main things we're gonna do tonight are bread and butter pickles. We're also gonna show you how to make, to start some sauerkraut for fermenting. But since this is a pickling class, we'll do this. I'm using, and Rach has, this to send out. This is a recipe that my mom used. It is not her handwriting, so I suspect she got it from one of our neighbors, you know, where we grew up, but she always used this recipe and everybody loved her bread and butter pickles. So
I
we're
would
gonna
like
use
to
that.
say Mary's mom was not an Ashkenazi Jewish grandma. My grandmas were Slovak Catholic and Southern Baptist. Mary's mom,
Italian. So, you know, but that's okay. It's
okay.
pickles and this is a great recipe.
But Jews pickled and pickled and
Exactly,
pickled.
exactly.
And therefore
Yeah,
pickling
I'm
in
Jewish
general
now
is
and
Jewish.
Mary's Jewish
Exactly.
adjacent, so it's
That's
all
right.
good.
Also, I'm a little more Jewish than her on the ancestry DNA, 2%. Thank you very much. So anyway, so this is the recipe we're gonna use. One of the other things we wanted to mention is, you know, kind of the cool thing about canning and preserving and things like that is, again, there's some core things, you know, with pickling and fermenting, your salt, your vinegars, those are really strict for the brining process or the fermenting process, but you know, your seasonings and things like that can absolutely be tailored. So this recipe my mom used calls for sliced cucumbers. We'll talk more about different kinds of those. Onions, green peppers, cloves of garlic, salt, white vinegar, sugar, turmeric or turmeric, celery seed and mustard seed. We don't always add the green pepper or the sweet red pepper usually. And tonight
We don't add the garlic.
we're leaving out the garlic.
Okay,
So
it's not a Jewish class anymore.
it's, well,
If it doesn't have the garlic.
Rachel sweats garlic, so I like it, but you don't want to be around me.
we did 98% of our prep last night and we didn't have garlic, so that sort of ended that. But again, the cool thing is you can mostly modify a lot of these recipes based on
Yeah.
taste. When we do preserving of like apple butter and things like that, we tend to use half the sugar that the recipe calls for.
Yes.
So it's really, you really base that, you know, you have your core ingredients that are gonna, you know, create the process of what you're doing. But then beyond that, you can kind of mix it up. So we pre-measured out a lot of stuff. We have a lot of these things already ready. So, you know, just a little history, because everybody loves a fun fact and, you know, we need filler. So, you know, pickles have been around, or pickling foods, whether by accident or on purpose, have been around since, you know, 2030 BC roughly.
Grog and his cousins accidentally died because it wasn't done right.
Sure. And, you know, around that time, you know, historians note that like cucumbers, which came from their native India, they're, you know, they have records of pickling being done around that time. And then, you know, sort of cucumbers and pickling made their way through North Africa and Sicily.
So for over 4,000 years, people have been pickling.
Exactly, which
Maybe the
is
Jews
really, really
started it.
cool. I don't, maybe. And then Rachel's gonna tell you a little bit about the origin of the word pickle, another fun fact.
So it actually comes from Dutch pickle. And Mary got a kick out of this. So, you know, German is pickle or Essigurke, which means the gherkin that you eat. So, you know, I looked up a few things here, and in Hebrew, I hope I get this right, it's melififun chamutz, and in Yiddish, it's zoira ugerka. So those are our fun little trivia things.
Right.
Zoira ugerka means sour pickle. So,
Or salt or brine, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously is really important to the pickling process.
Norwegian zoutgurke.
Exactly. I was gonna say that. I let Rach have that one. So
French cornichon.
pickling or pickled foods are preserved with salt or vinegar, right? And the salt and or the vinegar the salt and or the vinegar are what inhibit the growth of the spoilage bacteria, right?
If anybody knows any other languages, put it in the chat and we'll make Chris read it.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And pronounce it too.
Yeah.
So some recipes that you might use will contain enough salt or vinegar, you know, to allow those things to be stored at like in the refrigerator without hot processing or hot packing them. And then some other recipes you can or will need to be heat processed or heat packed, and then you can store them for longer at room temperature, right? But it's really the salt and vinegar, that brining that it sort of takes care of the growth of the spoilage bacteria. And then, you know, I think a lot of people know of, you know, using crocks for pickling and fermenting, which a lot of people still do, and you absolutely still can.
It's just more labor intensive.
Yeah, and you know, other names for pickles, like the type that we're doing, are crock pickles, salt pickles, brine pickles,
Dill pickles.
pickle.
That's ASL, pickle.
You have to say it like that.
You have to have a sour look on your face.
Oh. So again, we're gonna do bread and butter pickles. Rach, you wanted to talk a little bit about sort of what, a lot of people ask, like, what are the best cucumbers or pickles to use?
Yeah.
And that can depend on if you know, you're canning in the summer or the winter. You know, the neat thing is this is something that you can do year round too.
Yeah, so obviously fresh is better. So if you have a garden or you have access to a farmer's market, you know, or the grocery store, whatever, you can get, they're actually called pickling cucumbers. They're generally about that big, and they have the little spines on them. Those are the best, and it's best to can them immediately when you get home, like can them that day. If you can't get to it, then one thing that I'm gonna pull one out of here right now. I grew these in my garden. You can tell. So if you can't can them that day, then when you get them home, you'll see this is the stem end and the other end is the blossom end. The blossom is where they ripen from. So you want to cut that off before you store them in the fridge. And if you're going to can them that day, do that and then throw them in ice while you're waiting. But if not, at least cut that off before you throw them in the fridge. That'll help them to stop their ripening. Does somebody have a question? Okay.
I don't see one.
There's also, you know, and you can pickle the great big ones. It's all in how crisp you want them, what kind of pickle you're doing. The burpless cucumbers, and we call that because they don't have seeds. They have little seeds, but you know, if you save your seeds from cucumbers, you can plant them and they might produce. These ones will not. They're sterile cucumbers. So, you know, you can this is one that I got at Aldi as well. I mean, that I grew in my garden. You know, so you can use any kind, and it doesn't even have to be that. You can pickle zucchini. We used to, when I was a kid, pickle watermelon rind, and you can do it sweet or sour. So pretty much any vegetable you can pickle, carrots, celery, peppers, whatever.
Yeah.
But you know, we're just specifically doing bread and butter pickles.
Yeah. A lot of people use a variety of, like, they refer to American pickling cucumbers. There's a variety, Kirby variety. But again, you know, the neat thing is in the summer, you can get them fresh. And if you want to do this in the middle of winter, then you can just buy, you know, whatever you can find at your local grocery store, which is great.
And it's better in winter in a way because you're heating the house as opposed to heating the house when your air conditioner's running real hard. You know, you don't have one and it's 100 degrees outside.
So also, you know, the really important thing that you want when you can pickles is you know, whatever type of canned pickle you're doing, whether it's bread and butter or dill, you still want them to be crisp when you open them up, you know, a month from now or something like that. So some of the ways to do that are what Rach described when you bring them home. Also, what we'll show you while you're doing this process, you use a lot of ice to keep them very cold. But then you can also use this product called Pickle Crisp Granules.
And this is included in the thing that we'll be sending to you. So again, you don't have to write it down.
Yeah, we've never actually used that, but I think, you know, when I've looked at different recipes, a lot of folks use it and they're really, really great. So that's a great product. And we missed telling you also, you know, again, I'm using a family recipe that's been around for a very, very long time. But we've gotten a lot of different recipes online, but then also purchased some really great books that we've used. So Rach will
We
show
have
you a few
pictures of a
those.
bunch of the books in the printout as well, so there's a bunch of different ones. I got this one at Ollie's for $2.99, bunch of half-price books. We really like this one. It has kimchi recipes, it has fermenting and pickling recipes, pretty awesome. And the Bible of canning, and you can tell, I mean, it's been boiling water dropped on it, it's been through the ringer. Ball canning, they have a larger one as well to do more stuff. That's really your go-to. It teaches you how to can, and then has a bunch of kind of your traditional recipes and you know, all that stuff. So there, you can go to their website, you can go online and say, hey, Google, how do I pickle things? And it'll give you a bunch of recipes.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, I agree. This was when we branched out on our own, you know, beyond recipes that we knew that where we grew up, this was like literally the first book that we bought. So it's really great and sort of step by step, which is really fun. The other thing when you're doing pickles, things like that, another super important ingredient is the salt, obviously. So you're brining your vegetables, your produce.
Can you go back for a second?
We're gonna go back for a second.
Other ways, like we talked about keeping them crisp, some of the good varieties are the little gherkin mini ones. You want pickles with thin skins, market more Parisian, lemon cucumbers, stuff like that. And so you want them smaller and younger, and canning them right away, putting them in ice water. And a couple of things here which we didn't know. You can add natural tannins when you're pickling. That'll keep them crisp. We've never done this, but you can put right in the pickling brine and then into the jars. Grape leaves or whole black tea leaves, horseradish leaves or oak leaves. And those are some natural tannins. I'm guessing you put those on the top when you pack and then you don't have to eat it. I don't want to eat an oak leaf. You know, and probably don't just go out and pick one up and make sure nobody's spraying stuff, wash them. But you know, I've heard that works really well. So,
Okay. So, so for the salt, one of the main things about, when you're doing pickling or fermenting is, you can certainly buy a pretty standard pickling salt, like Morton salt makes a great pickling salt. The main thing is you want it to be, fine grain. So,
not kosher. What's it called? Horse
Horse.
kosher salt, not
Thank
that.
you, Jan. Our studio audience is top notch. So this was a new one that I bought. It's a Himalayan pink salt. You don't have to buy pink salt or it doesn't have to be that, but really the main thing is either get something that says it's specific for pickling or that is a very fine grain. But if you read up on that, you'll see a lot of people use all kinds of different types, sea salts, things like that, but having it be fine grain is really pretty important. So that's the salt that we're gonna use. Rachel's doing something off camera, but we're gonna keep going.
I just put mine to gallery so I could see at least names.
Oh,
So,
okay.
look, John is here. John and Sonia are here.
So what we did, so this recipe overall, basically, again, we mentioned you want to get your big pot of water started, get all of your supplies out. You know, you want to, the canning jars that you're using, most recipes that you'll find will tell you you know, how many pounds or quarts of produce you're going to use, and then how many quarts or pints or half pints the recipe makes. So again, we do a lot of small batch canning, or if we do a recipe that says it makes, you know, 5 pints, we may split that up into, you know, half pints or quarter pints, just because, you know, we'll give these to friends and family and things like that.
That's what you guys are getting, John and Sonia and Chris.
So, so she just made me totally lose my train of thought. I know those of you who know us are shocked by this.
How much we make.
Basic math.
Thanks, man. So get these ready. We usually just put these through the dishwasher. So you want to make sure that all of your equipment is clean, your lids, your rings.
And even though they were through the dishwasher, we packed them, and when I got here today, I washed and sanitized them again. So,
Right.
Yes, Mara has a question.
So do you keep them hot?
We will put them on, we
Yeah.
brought these here to show people and we don't leave them on in boiling water for a long time, but we do put them in. So that they're hot when we hot pack can.
We actually used to do that where after we washed them and while we were working, we'd fill the sink with very hot water and we would keep them warm. One of the reasons for doing that is, for this recipe, for example, we're going to, we have a batch that's already brined and ready to go. We're gonna put that on the stove with other ingredients and vinegar, and then we're gonna boil that. You don't wanna put anything that you're boiling, that you're pre-cooking before you can it. You don't want to put hot, the hot stuff into your jars. A jar that's why I didn't really want to go there. So you don't want to put that into a jar that's, room temperature or cool. So, and also you want to sterilize the jars as well. So what we typically do, and you'll see a little bit later, is as we're getting things ready, maybe we're cooking, as we're cooking the pickles, we're gonna put all of the jars into a boiling water bath to sterilize them. We take them out as we're doing our canning. That way everything is hot, the jars are sterilized. So thank you for that question, Mara. That's really good.
And this recipe makes 8 pints, which is this size jar. One other thing I want to say, this isn't really appropriate for pickling. It would look weird, but they make really cute different types of jars too. We'll sometimes do jam in this one. This is a half pint. So they do make some really cutesy jars. And one of the, we would never use this for jelly, but if you really like pickles, that's a half-gallon jar.
Yeah.
So, if you're gonna eat them a little bit at a time, if you're gonna eat them every day.
It's true. That's for your friend Rick. And we also use that size when we do when we ferment cabbage, we'll use a large size like that. So for this recipe, again, sliced cucumbers, how thick do you slice them? Again, sometimes that's kind of dependent on what you like, but typically a good, I don't know what to say about that, but
Quarter inch.
yeah, maybe like a 1/4 inch or so is helpful. But again, sometimes that's really up to you and maybe even the recipe as well. So we did a little pre-slicing, but then earlier today, we also went through the recipe and put a batch onto brine. So for this particular recipe that we'll send out to everybody, it's sliced cucumbers, sliced onions. We're just using regular yellow onions and we slice those pretty thin.
You can use red onions, you can use Vidalia onions.
Yay.
Trivia question, and if you know, you can put your answer in the chat. There might be a prize involved. You're not allowed to look it up on Google. Does anybody know what Vidalia onions have in common with champagne? Go.
Okay. I do not.
No idea.
So chopped green pepper or red pepper, which again, we're not using, whole cloves of
I
garlic.
do have a pepper that I grew in my garden.
Whole cloves of garlic peeled, salt, vinegar, sugar, turmeric, celery seed, and mustard seed. So our vinegar and sugar and the spices are mixed separately. That doesn't go into brine. So what you want to do for this particular recipe, we sliced everything up.
Any size you want is, like a really thick pickle.
And then you're gonna take a bowl. And for us, since we just did the cucumbers and the onions, you want to start layering those. And I think I had you mix it. I did mix it. I mixed the salt mixture and then I sort of moved it. So you're basically going to start to layer the cucumbers, the onions, and if you use the peppers and the garlic, and you're going to layer
One
that.
other thing that we forgot, if you don't want to invest in a big canning thing, you can also use a smaller pot. You just want to make sure that there's enough room to put the jars in and for the water to cover them, and that the jars don't sit directly on the bottom. You don't want them right against the heat source. So what we do is we have this old, many years old steamer thing that we can just put in there. And when we do a small batch, we can fit 4 or 5 of these little jars in there. So, you don't have to go buy the equipment. You can buy the little the canning things that come with it, you can just use the tongs that you already have, you know.
Okay.
We had an answer.
Oh,
What's the answer?
Oh, geez. I don't know how to look it up again, but I think somebody named Pamela said they're both names of cities.
They are names of cities,
oh,
but specifically, you can't call it a Vidalia onion if it's not grown in Vidalia, Georgia.
That's true.
Can't call it champagne if it's not grown in Champagne. That's why they have like sparkling alcohol and stuff like that. You know, that's what
Oh,
we have in common.
oh, nice. Okay. Well, there you go.
thank you.
So, yeah, that's pretty cool. So, what we're doing at this point is we're sort of setting the produce to brine. So we're going to be layering with the amount of salt that the recipe calls for. As we put the cucumbers and the onions in, we're going to be layering, sort of layering the salt over each, each layer of vegetables. No.
Okay. Sorry, I
She jumped the gun. Okay.
talking.
And this will brine, so you're gonna leave this to brine. Again, this recipe depends on what you're making. And this will brine for about 3 hours at room temperature. So after we mix it up and we put all the ice in, you can just leave it sit. And
Go watch TV.
the ice will melt.
Great British Baking Show. Chris Fenimore.
Hey, girls,
Yes.
Yeah.
is it possible to like tilt the camera a little bit down so we could see more of what you're doing? All right, cool.
Thank you.
So she's putting a layer of the cucumbers and the onions. And then after each layer, she's adding some salt. And that just makes sure that all of the pickles are going to brine, not just a few of them. You want to get it mixed up in there really well. I'll put in the ones that I sliced too.
What?
I did, I sliced a few.
Completely throwing off the recipe.
I know. That's the beauty of it. You could add more or less of anything. If you have too many, you slice too many, you can either eat the extra spices or, put them in someone else's mouth and make them eat them.
Uh-huh.
Or you can just cook them anyway. And then if, you can a few extra, or if it's like, oh, these aren't going to fit,
Okay.
put them in a jar and put them in your fridge. And eat those first.
So you put roughly, maybe not that whole scoop, a tray of ice after you put your cucumbers and then your onions in layers with the salt in between. And then you're going to put about a tray of ice cubes on top.
And we'd like to thank Temple Fine Ice Kitchen for having an ice maker.
Yeah. And then, wow, that's a really thick one, right?
Yeah, I know. That was fun.
That's a
So
bunch of
mix
cucumbers.
this up really well. Again, you want to make sure that, you're getting the salt throughout. I keep coming across this giantly sliced cucumber.
It's like, what's that thing at, on Mardi Gras, the little king that they put the king cake? It's the king cucumber.
Baby.
Maybe, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, so you've got that mixed throughout. Be careful you didn't get a paper cut at work today like someone did. And then you want to put another tray of ice cubes on top.
Sound effect brought to you by me.
Just to make sure that all of the cucumbers are covered. We probably could use a little bit more right now. So that's what that looks like. And then you're just gonna leave that sit, again, at room temperature for 3 hours. And that's gonna, create a little bit more of a brine.
If your house is really warm and it like really starts to melt, throw some more on there, but it's okay. You want it to melt. It's gonna melt with the ice. You're gonna eventually end up with ice water. Can you put the camera a little? I don't want to.
Okay, we've got another question.
There.
Oh, yay.
See, so it ends up being ice water.
Okay, what's the question, gang?
Are metal bowls better to use than glass or ceramic?
Oh, Chris, do you know? I don't know the answer to that.
Chris is Mary's friend since 6th grade, and she's a registered dietitian, and she's joining us from Georgia.
Do you know the answer to that?
Well, usually they say not to use utensils that are going to react.
Mhm.
And if that's a stainless steel bowl, that's fine. If it was aluminum, maybe not so much.
Okay.
Glass and ceramic is non-reactive, so either one of those would be fine.
Yeah, you
Excellent.
don't want me carrying.
That
around
looks like
that.
it's stainless though.
Yeah, these are all stainless.
Okay, that's a great question,
Yeah.
actually. Thanks for that. Sorry, I know we're putting you on the spot, Chris, but really, when it comes to food science, she's our go-to person. So it is not uncommon for me to text her on a Saturday afternoon to say, oh my God, I don't have cream of tartar. What do I do to replace that?
I've been in those emergency situations.
Okay.
with her.
So our
Tip it up a little now.
original batch of pickles is done brining, right? So the next steps for us here, we're gonna drain these in a colander or a strainer. If you're not Gen X, I guess, or older, whatever. And you want to get, we don't need any remaining ice or anything like that. You don't want to rinse them. So, again, you still want the salt and things like that. We also,
Joe
mix-
says hi.
Hi, Joe.
That's her brother.
We also pre-mix the rest of the ingredients that we're going to use. So that includes sugar, mustard seed, turmeric, and celery seed.
Can you show us what it looks like?
Yeah. No, show this.
Yeah, I know. But we encourage you to buy your spices locally. Penzies is great. And I know they're not just a local, but they're incredibly socially conscious.
The other people that we recommend these days are Burlap and Barrel because they're bespoke spices and they are the freshest spices around.
Burlap and Barrel
Mhm.
sounds cool.
Okay,
So
we have one on that's brining. Again, that's a 3-hour process. And then we have
we'll be
one
canning those tonight.
that is essentially ready to be canned. So
We started brining
Um,
around 4:15.
we did. So I'm going to, I'm gonna drain this completely. And then Rach is gonna take a lot of our tools and everything over to the stove area where we're actually gonna mix this. The next step for this is mixing in your sugar and your spices and your vinegar, putting that on the stove and bringing that to a boil. Prior to, hot packing that. So we'll get that started over at the stove and then we'll come back and we'll do a little bit of a demo around sauerkraut fermenting cabbage, okay?
Talk amongst yourself for about a minute.
Share, yeah.
Close your eyes because the camera's gonna move.
Is this the kitchen at the temple? Because it is awesome.
It's what? It's like 100 times bigger than our kitchen. So we've moved over here. I'm going to show you the big canning pot that we have. It's huge. And we've got that on there. You can tell it's boiling. And then we also have the pan that we're going to throw our jars in to sterilize. We have that there. And we also have getting you dizzy, a third pan, which we haven't put the heat on yet because it's so little. We're going to throw our lids and rings, which are right there. We're going to throw those in there to sterilize those as well. So even though everything has been washed multiple times.
Washing is not sterilizing.
Yes, exactly. So you're washing it, but you want to make sure it's sterile when you put it in. So you're going to boil it and that makes sure that anything that got on there after you washed it is gone. Mary's taking the last of the ice out of the cucumber. So we have this lovely, and thank you, Temple, man. We've got some nice pans here. Is this aluminum, Chris?
Yes.
Okay, I'll get our other pan.
No, that's fine because you're not brining in it.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
You're just boiling in it, right?
Yes, we're just boiling
Yeah,
it. Thank
that's
you,
fine.
Chris. So we've got this, we're gonna put the pickles in here shortly, and then we'll put this stuff on that we talked about. how much water or whatever do we add? Don't you love this? We're totally unscripted. Oh, that's right, vinegar. Woo! I was like, there's no liquid.
Show that.
Our lovely assistant Jan is showing you, these are the onions and the pickles. I don't know if you can see, they've actually gotten much brighter from being cold and getting that. So we're gonna pour these into the pan. Thank you, lovely assistant Jan. And there's a little bit of ice in there, and that's okay. It's not gonna kill anybody. Remember, cucumbers and onions have water naturally in them, so a little bit of water doesn't hurt, but you want to get most of the ice out so you're not watering down. That's where they came from. Watering down the pickles. So there they are in the pan. Come on, Mary. Mary's in charge. She's more Jewish than me, remember?
2%. Okay. So the next step for the pickles is have to try to get the white vinegar open. Again, we scaled this recipe back quite a bit. So to sort of finish with your brine, it's actually 3/4 of a cup of white vinegar. Just into the pot. As opposed to on the floor. I don't know why I said that. Right? And then we mentioned we've got the sugar, mustard seed, celery seed, and turmeric. Turmeric, anybody want to weigh in on that one? Nobody wants to weigh in on that one, that's okay. So we'll mix that up really well. Obviously, you know, if you, for bread and butter pickles, if you see a lot of them, if you have that, just sort of that nice orange color, that's the turmeric. And, you know, like we were saying, what's really great is that cold brine really makes these just so colorful. As we heat this, the sugar will dissolve, obviously. So we've got the onions, the pickles, mustard seed. And then we're gonna put this on the stove and we're gonna bring it just to a boiling before we go ahead and pan those. Okay. Then what we're gonna do, so while this is boiling, we've got our other, all of our other water boiling, either at a rolling boil or almost a rolling boil. We put a small, we usually use a really small pan because you also want to sterilize your lids. Not your rings, because those go externally, so you just want to make sure that those are washed really well. Brand new lids, usually you can buy these in a box. You can buy them as rings and lids for the jars. Sometimes you can buy a case of jars that have everything, or you can buy them separately, but these really need to be sterilized as well. You yeah, you can't reuse these after you've canned, or you know, if you use the product yourself or you give it out, these are going to seal, hopefully, and hopefully we'll be able to see that tonight. Once you open that product, you can't reuse these for canning again. We don't want these in a big rolling boil, but we do want to bring the water up to boiling. So some bubbles, but not a huge rolling boil, because you don't want to degrade. This is a rubber seal. You don't want to degrade that. So I'm going to put this on to boil, and then we're going to make another move back over to our other workspace, where we're going to show you how to do a little bit of fermenting of cabbage to make sauerkraut.
Okay, close your eyes again, folks.
So yeah, so we're gonna do some sauerkraut. Like we said, that's fermenting, not pickling, but it's something that's really easy to do at home. Again, this one, if you do it in a crock, is more labor intensive because you have to keep checking it every couple days and skimming it off. we'll show you a really easy way to make the sauerkraut over the course of a couple weeks. And then we will be also canning that, but we'll probably do that later tonight when we get to home. Or actually, we're making a small batch, so we might just, eat it out of the fridge. Well, we wouldn't can it when we get home. It has to ferment for 2 weeks. God, Rachel. So the first thing we want to do, oh, she's back. Sorry. So I'm going to have, because Mary's a scientist with undergraduate degree in biology, so she's going to explain the chemistry.
Yes, she's not a chemist, so, we've read about this and we've written it on a piece of paper. So, fermenting is, a chemical reaction that converts carbohydrates and sugars to alcohol or acid, right? And we've probably all eaten fermented foods in some form or another, liquids, food products, beer, kimchi, sauerkraut, kefir, right? We could go on and on. So there's a
John
lot
and
of different,
Sonia after they've had a few beers.
so there's a lot of different foods now, and really there's a big movement behind this too, right? Because we know also that fermented foods are also good for our gut microbiome. So that's kind of the process behind that. Fermented foods carry these, friendly bacteria and live enzymes. And so those cultures are kind of beneficial to our digestive tracts. And again, lots of different methods for this. Most commonly, before jars and some neat pieces of equipment will show you, this was done in, sort of crocks, which again, lots of people still do it that way. And it's completely fine to do that. We've never tried that way.
Basically, our house is not big enough to put crocks around somewhere. Our kitchen is this big.
Right. So basically we've usually done our fermenting in mason jars. And so the neat thing is there's a lot of new products out there that you can buy. This one we bought on Amazon actually very recently because my old version of this kind of bit the dust. So this
Lost a whole batch of sauerkraut.
yeah. This company is called Jillmo, Jillmo, stainless steel.
And all of this will be included in the document that we'll send.
Yes. This is for wide mouth mason jars. And even this one is still a little bit more complex than some of the other ones out there. But basically this whole kit contains, this is for wide mouth mason jars, includes a ring, a lid. None of this gets sterilized. There's a little bit of a
Seal.
thank you there.
O-ring.
And basically what you're
It's
doing.
plastic, not glass.
Do you have the directions over there. Oops, I did this at home last night. I even practiced it because after I did that the first time, I thought, well, that's gonna look stupid on camera.
I can show you what it looks like put together here if you want.
Sure, let's do that.
So this is our sauerkraut that we're gonna have to tip that some.
Oh, dude.
I know. Let's drink that. This is our sauerkraut that we started last night. And this is with it assembled. So that has an air seal there. And what it does is it allows the gas to come out and escape
As it's fermenting.
but it's sealed with the water, so it can't get back in. So, this is that anaerobic? Is that what we're saying? It's an anaerobic process.
Right.
So,
The
not
other
jazz
thing
or
that's important is you want to leave, really, I sort of messed this up a little bit because once we do the brine, I had to add a little bit more salt brine to this. You actually want the level of your produce. You want that sort of not mixed throughout. You want to pack that down. And then there's actually a little bit too much brine here. You want the brine to be maybe an inch or two below the top of the jar. What you can do, this has if you can see it, it's a little plastic, what do we call it before?
doohickey.
Wow. And
Thingamajig.
when you're in your 50s.
What are they called?
I said thingamajig.
Thingamajig,
Exactly.
yes,
Thank you.
from the
Yeah.
diet station.
That's it. So, because I can't remember the name of it, but basically this fits down into the jar. We'll show you so that it presses the produce down. Then you want the brine on top of that. You can actually buy these glass weights or ceramic weights that are really neat that just
Yeah.
fit down in the jar and press that down. Somebody didn't splurge on that.
John wants to know if you have a weight on the cabbage.
I don't, and I wish I did. I put 2 of these in there. And I'm not, I've decided I'm not really a fan.
That was not
Um,
planned.
So I will make a recommendation, and this is nothing against these things. It's just, I think that I'm gonna invest in those. They're not quite all that cheap. So when you put this in, it really should sort of sit like that. But they are a little bit finicky, and because there's holes here, I slice the cabbage really thin. Sometimes it kind of comes up above that. So I actually think that those weights are really neat, and I think they do a much better job, and they have all different sizes of them. So, but we're using these that came with our original kit. So this particular sauerkraut recipe, cabbage, obviously you can use red cabbage, green cabbage, this
Curly cabbage, whatever.
or cabbage. Juniper berries, dill seed, and carrot seed. It's late.
And salt.
And salt, lots of salt.
Normally
right?
we'd be home in our pajamas. Come
Right,
on.
exactly. Watching reruns of Friends or ER.
Yes.
Because that's what we do. So, again, I think, caraway seeds are what sort of give sauerkraut a very distinctive taste. But again, like this recipe, the juniper berries were optional. So, you can ferment sauerkraut without any seasonings whatsoever. The salt is really sort of the main ingredient. Okay, go.
And a good sign that when we talked about you can use different amounts of produce, could you tip that back a little bit again? There we go. The recipe calls for 2 medium-sized cabbages. I don't know what that means. Like, I know this is small and this is big, but I don't know, so they don't give you a cup amount or anything. It's really do a bunch of cabbage, put this stuff in it, and then shove it in the jars, and when you're done shoving it in the jars, that's how much. So I sliced some up, but I'm going to show you a little bit. Like I tried to slice it. You want to, when you first get a cabbage, chop off one end of it so you can set it on the cutting board and it sits flat, and you're not trying to chop something that's round and rolling around. Safety first. You all may not know that I also have 7 years of food service in my background. So I just sliced it up,
Because there's
then,
nothing right as
yeah, nothing I haven't done. I don't even know. So, some people leave it in the great big pieces. Some people chop it into tiny pieces. I cut a bunch early. I didn't even look at how much I cut. I just cut a bunch. So we had it to
Also,
show.
remember, this is, everything we're doing is pretty manual. You can use a food processor to chop. You can use a cheese grater to chop it.
What are
That's
those things
fine
called?
too.
The mooly?
Mooly.
That's the one that you, yeah.
And if you really don't feel like doing any of those things, you can just buy it at the store already shredded. So the neat thing is I love cooking and I love just sort of the manual labor part of it. But the last batch we did was we just bought it at the store, so that really cuts your time down. Okay, where are you at, right?
So basically, let me tip it down again. See, I know we keep doing that. Oh, you got some window or something came up. So you want to basically beat the crap out of the cabbage. You want to get it to start. I know you're not on me right now, but yeah.
Oh, you're frozen.
Okay, hold on a second. We are frozen. Okay, there we go.
Hello?
We're back.
With like half of their seasons.
Oh yeah. So, oh yeah, that's right, you did too.
I didn't do 2 medium cabbages worth. I know that. I probably did about half of that, but I mixed the full seasoning amount. So we're gonna like mix that up and then divide it.
So what you want to do to start after you slice your cabbage is you're going to mix up all of the spices and your salt. Again, we're using the Himalayan. I feel like I'm doing a commercial. I'm really not. the fine grained salt. And then as you're mixing with your hands, you want to slowly incorporate the salt and
Some more again.
there you go. Incorporate the salt and your spices.
Make a
there.
mess like
You wanna-
Rachel is.
You want to throw it on the table, which is
Well, I probably should get a bigger bowl.
common activity of Rachel Kudrick. Those of you who know her, you will not be surprised. So you're really kind of massaging this in and just making sure that, we're going big.
Medium cabbage, large cabbage.
Yeah, so you're really sort of massaging this in really, really well.
So yeah, you're doing that. You know, I also kind of rinse my hands some because you're. And then you also, while you're doing this, find big chunks that you don't want that in your sauerkraut, you set those aside. I don't think Mary wants those in her sauerkraut. So you're kind of like mooshing it up. The other great thing about making stuff like this is when you're mad, you can do it. Like, I'm really mad, I'm gonna go canned. So we do this, and then Mary's gonna come over because she wants to show you her method of crushing the cabbage. And she bought a fancy tool.
It's not that fancy, but you can get a vegetable pounder. Again, I bought this the other day and I should have also bought the, stones and weights to go in. And so really you're just getting this started. What will happen as the brines, start to be made is that it makes the cabbage weep. So the liquid is sort of
Speeding it
coming
up.
out. And this sort of really, this is the first time I've used one of these and it actually worked really well.
I believe they
sort
can get
of-
me like that too.
Yeah. It's not too late. So it really does a nice job of sort of getting that,
And if-
getting that started.
If you don't want to buy the fancy, not fancy tool, there's always, those are flexible, magnetic. There's always your meat mallet. And you don't want to use that end, but if you use the top of it, you can, get in there and do the same thing. Or if you don't have any utensils at all, bag. That's for when you're really mad.
Okay,
So, yeah.
so, and then.
My class, my gardening class is called Gardening on the Cheap. So we also do that with candy. Like,
Yeah.
how can I do this and not spend a lot of money?
So this is actually looking really good. And again, you've got all of the, it's starting kind of to smell like sauerkraut, right? With the different,
Caraway, right?
yeah, with the different seasons. So once you do that, then you actually are going to leave this to sit for about 30 minutes. And periodically you can kind of come back and pound it again. And that's just going to keep releasing the brine. And then hopefully if we have time, we'll get this in here. We'll show you how to put the fermenting Buzma on top because we can't remember the name. So meanwhile, back over the oven, our pickles that we put the vinegar and the spices in are just starting to boil. All the rest of the water is boiling. So we're going to go back over there and we're actually going to hot pack can the pickles.
We're gonna wash our hands on the way because we have sauerkraut on them. Here we go. Or frozen. Technical difficulties.
They're trying to keep this part secret from us.
Yeah, we're frozen, so.
Yes, it's the secret information that we cannot know. Mara's gonna work on that. We can hear you guys, just can't see you. Do you guys have any questions or anything? Any, oh, I love making this kind of pickle, or oh, I love pickling this thing.
This class sucks.
Yeah, this class sucks. Why is that blonde lady even there? The brunette's doing all the work.
Thanks for spending your Thursday.
Yeah, thank you. We're really excited.
This is really fun. And honestly, any excuse we have to do some canning or make, some homemade food is really the best.
Did you do a screenshot or something?
No,
No?
we're just, we have unstable, okay, maybe I like pickled beets.
Oh, pickled beets, yes.
Oh, I love beets and I haven't done pickled beets ever. And I don't know why. It's something I should do this winter, but that's something. The book that we have that we showed you earlier, I'll go grab that for the name, but that has some great recipes for a lot of root vegetables. So I love your root vegetables for the winter. You know, carrots, beets, things like that. It has some great pickling recipes in that book in particular.
Kimchi was somebody else's answer.
Yep.
Okay, why can't I make is yours working?
I'm right now. So we're gonna switch. This one will still be recording. But we're gonna. Oh, whoa! I did not mean to do that. We're gonna switch the video to this.
Can you hear us?
Can you hear us okay?
But the problem is,
we're still working on this. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but there was
hear
an
you.
echo.
Oh, there we go.
I couldn't hear you. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. This one.
Can you hear me?
I did.
There's still an echo there.
We've got an echo chamber going.
There we go. Okay. So can you see us now?
Yes.
So this is the one when I teach class with my gardening class, I use the recipes from here. I know the Ball Canning book is the Bible, but I did kimchi, I did sweet pickled watermelon rind, I did some dill pickles, some bread and butter pickles. For that I used for Mom's recipe, but there's just all kinds of stuff. So, you know, pick what you like. People also pickle eggs. I have no idea what that process is, so that's just, we stick to vegetables and fruits.
Okay, so here's some of our really important tools. Again, lots of pot pads, of course. This is a great little. There's a magnet on the end of this, so when we put our lids into our small pot to sterilize those, it can
Safety first.
anyway. So when it's kind of hard to get we use a small pot I showed you before to sterilize our lid. It's kind of hard to get those out with a pair of tongs sometimes, and this little magnetic doohickey is really, really cool for that. And this guy here is great to put the jars in and out of the pan when they're done, before when we're sterilizing them. So this is really helpful too. But again, you don't have to have these things, just, you know, they're really helpful. So what we're going to do is we've got our jars, they're clean, they've been setting out room temperature. We're going to get them into one of our pots to start sterilizing for a little while. And then we're also going to put our lids into
Mara Addison says those two doohickeys are very helpful, and I have to agree.
Right? Exactly. So then we're going to put our lids into the small pot, and Rach is putting the jars into our larger pot. You want to make sure those are submerged.
And I put that little
So they
steamer
sterilize.
thing in it, so they're not sitting on the bottom. You gotta make sure you're doing that whenever you want to make sure they're not on the pan. So we'll give them a little bit of time. You got the lids in. Yes, and if you don't buy the fancy Ball Canning lid thing, you can, the little magnet thing, you can get a spoon or something and like tape a large, just the magnet, not like the plastic part from your fridge, but just put a magnet on it, you know, maybe not tape it, but use that to pull them out. The magnet is very, very helpful. I spent years as a kid trying to get them with tongs and burning my fingers. So
I need one.
she needs one more tool. I don't know what it is. I'm a little concerned. Oh yes, that tool.
So when you're doing any type of canning, usually the recipe will tell you whatever jar you're using, it will say leave a 1/2 inch headspace or a 1/4 inch headspace. So that is the space between, you know, where your produce or the liquid is So like the pickles will have a lot of liquid in them, and the top of the jar, because obviously we're going to be putting this into a rolling boil, so you don't want that to open up or explode. So this is another cool doohickey, because we're just going to go with that tonight. And put that on.
You can use a regular wide mouth funnel, but this is fancy.
Yeah, so when you're, especially when you're dealing with not just liquid, this is a nice helpful funnel that you can get stuff in without making a big mess. And this one's kind of cool because it has the gradations on the side, which tell you, you want to look at this at eye level, and, are you at a 1/4 inch headspace, or are you at a 1/2 inch? The other kind of neat thing is...
That is awesome.
I know. I can't remember where we got this from. But, as you're doing this, the other thing, and this somebody out there may not like this at all, and that's really okay. If you don't have one of these, usually a 1/2 inch headspace is about here. So you can see the threads here on the jar. And then a 1/4 inch headspace is right about up here. So if you're kind of in a pinch and you don't have this cool thing, but believe me, it's really cool, you can use that as a guide as well. But you want to read your recipe to make sure that you're managing that space so that it doesn't boil over.
Yeah, so when you look, that second thread goes around and changes level. But I don't know if you can see the seam on the glass. Where that seam is, it's about a quarter inch. But you can always look wherever you...
Here we go. We're back. We're back recording. So the other thing we're going to do when we ladle into the jars, we're going to make sure we get rid of the air bubbles. We're going to make sure that we meet the headspace.
Okay, guys, turn off your audio.
Okay.
Gotcha.
Like that? Or
Just mute your
and
audio.
mute us.
Now I'm not hearing anything.
Can't mute the presenter. We can't hear her.
We can't hear anything now.
Hey guys.
Is that better? Can you hear us?
Can you hear us?
I still can't hear.
Thank you.
That's what it
Yep.
looks like now. That nice yellow from the mustard seed.
And it's too bad we don't have it's not.
Seriously.
So then Rachel's going to get some of the jars.
Very, very hot, so we're always cautious. Can you guys see everything okay? Yeah.
Oh, this pot is like 100 pounds.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be very strong to work with this pot.
I believe for this recipe, it's a 1/4 inch headspace. Is that right? What I said?
I think so. Yeah, she looked it up because her mom did not have that on the recipe. Back in the day, they didn't care about that. They just put the pickles in.
Okay.
That's all that fancy hipster stuff.
Can you? Maybe we can move this a little closer.
I don't know. I'm just. Can you guys see okay? Let's see. There we go.
Paula, thanks for joining us. We'll make sure you get the recipe.
Thanks, Maura. This is great. You guys are fabulous.
Oh,
Why,
thank you.
thank you.
It's fun.
Again, all the recipes and all the tips and everything, I put into a Word document that will send to everybody who registered, because we have their emails, and this is being recorded, so.
It's great when you have two people doing this because, you know, we sort of get our little assembly line going, so that one of us is filling the jars, making sure we have enough liquid and everything in there. And then the other one is
Burning your fingers.
is, you know, wiping the lid off. Sometimes, you know, it's
Cleaning the rims.
okay if you need to take some of the vegetables or the liquid out, you know. Is this one out? It's not. Go ahead, Rachel.
Well, I was just saying, you know, when I was a kid, we did a lot of canning of peaches. And to get the air out, we used a butter knife, which works fine, but is metal and is more likely to break your glass. So, you know, this is one fancy tool that we recommend. It's very fancy. You can see it's a piece of plastic, but it's sold as a canning equipment. So Mary just overfilled a jar a little bit, so she's pulling a little out. Please.
So then you take your lovely magnetic doohickey, and once you've wiped off the jar, you're going to hand tighten it. You don't want to crank it too hard, because, well, you just don't. I don't know the answer to that actually,
You'll
but
never get it off.
you don't want to. Yeah, you don't want to crank that too hard because again, these are going to expand once we get them in the boiling water bath.
And this is the implement. These go into here and then into the canning thing. Be careful if you buy one of these because some of them, I don't know why, the thing is so high that these slip out. It's a hard thing to find out by accident. So a lot of times you can see this hangs on the edge of the pot. So we'll actually set this in the pot and put them in as we go so they get heated. So I'm actually going to do that right now while Mary's filling them. Sorry. Any questions, comments? Channel, James?
In the chat.
Any other, did a lot of you grow up either pickling yourselves or watching your grandparents, parents pickle? Anybody throw on in?
It's in my hand.
Yeah. Any favorite recipes, even if they're not pickles? Like I always loved canning peaches. Their peaches are just the best. Mary and I make a ton of apple butter. We started expanding this year. We make some peach mustard sauce, some peach barbecue sauce, some cherry barbecue sauce, all with local produce that we got different places.
We have, and some of our friends and family know this, when we travel, particularly in the fall, we do a lot of foraging of fruit trees that, you know, are not on private property. Okay, sometimes they are on private property, we're not gonna lie. But, you know, sometimes we ask the people who live there if we can forage, so.
And sometimes we don't.
That's really, really fun, because we do that a lot with a lot of apples. Because they grow wild in a lot of places, and it's because
Thank you, Johnny Appleseed.
They're really fresh, lots of different wild varieties, so it's kind of neat to.
When the jar's hot, that's perfect.
It's kind of neat to use different varieties in in your apple butter, or if you're making applesauce or things like that, because they really do taste very, very different. So it's really fun when we're traveling. We will sort of forage for all different kinds of produce that we can find.
We
Okay.
have a fruit picker basket and a pole that extends to 24 feet, so we can pick the fruit. And based on where we pick it from, that's what we name this stuff. So we were in Maine 5 years ago, visiting our friends John and Sonia, who are on with us tonight. And we made apple butter and called it our Maine blend. We actually picked a few in New Hampshire, and Mary made me keep those in a separate bag because we had to have a Maine blend.
Sure. So what Rach is doing, and I don't think this is really necessary, she has that rack that will hold the jars, and she's put it right in the top of the boiling water bath. And then, you know, if you're doing a lot of jars, it's going to take a little bit of time. Again, you don't want the jars cooling off. So you can either do that so the bottom of the jars stay warm, or, you know, a lot of times we'll put them in the sink, just partially filled, not above the lid, with hot water, just sitting in hot water to make sure that, again, the jars don't cool off too much.
Another piece of that, though, inclusion is very, very important. And I have a disability in my foot, and so sometimes I don't have good balance. So I would rather take one jar at a time over there than put the whole rack and then try to carry it over, because if I drop something, I'd rather drop one. So that's another thing that you can do.
And they get heavy, right?
Yeah, they get heavy, particularly, you know, when we're doing peaches, we're doing quarts. So you'll put 8 to 10 quarts in there.
Okay. So, Rach, do you mind bringing the computer over?
I don't mind at all. We're walking over to the stove. Go. I'm gonna cook here all the time.
So this is what the pot looks like, right? That's the rack in there. So they're sitting down just a little bit. And then once you're ready to go, you don't touch those with your hands.
You know, I was here a little bit earlier and I heard this pot talking to a kettle and it called it black.
And so then you just lift this up and gently lower it down. I think we mentioned at the beginning, you want to make sure that the boiling water is a couple inches above the top of your cans.
It's okay if it's
jars.
more than that. You just don't want it to be less than that.
And then you want to cover it up. If you have this open for a while and, you know, the water sort of stops being a rolling boil, then what I usually do is add a few minutes onto the processing time, or just cover it up and sort of take a peek until it's back up to a rolling boil. So whatever the recipe says for the processing time, you want to make sure that's at a rolling boil. So for this recipe, it's a 10-minute processing time. So I'm going to set a little timer, and we do have a couple left.
Oh no,
probably wouldn't fit in a jar. So for things like this, you can always put them in a little Tupperware container and put them in your fridge, but you want to eat those sooner than later because, again, they're not hot processed. A lot of people love pickle juice, so, you know, there's usually extra. It's certainly better to have extra than not. So we're going to let those process for 10 minutes, and I think we're probably good to go back over, and we'll put the cabbage. We'll show you how that looks with the brine started, and then we'll get that in.
Hold on.
With.
Go ahead. Don't take the computer.
Oh, we're not taking the computer. I don't know what we're doing.
Mary says, oh no, we have extra pickles. Put them in the fridge. People, don't put them in the fridge. Eat them hot.
Or that.
They're not hot anymore, but they're nice and warm. We're going to ask our studio audience how they feel about that. Studio audience.
They're very crunchy.
All right. There's our studio audience, by the way. Mara and Jan. They're
really good.
They're our audio visual team. They're the studio audience.
Want to try one?
Yeah, we didn't do so well on the audio-based visual.
Okay.
It's really yummy.
So,
And again, the pickle juice is very healthy, and I do drink it. It's yummy. But, you know, if we're going to make more tomorrow or the next day, we'll just save the extra juice and add to it, you know, for the next set.
okay.
Okay.
I'm going to clean this up. You're going to go over there real quick.
All right. What am I doing when I get over there?
You're gonna see how the brine's doing. You might need to add more brine. If you have to
Okay.
add some
Okay, so here's our sauerkraut now. You can tell just like the, can you hear us now?
Yes,
Good, okay. So Mary was saying, did you guys hear about the tap water versus the spring water?
no,
Or not spring water, yeah, that it's better to use, you don't want anything with fluorine in it. So if you have a filter on your fluoride, whatever. Mary was saying the wrong word and now we're all screwed up. That's right, I threw her under the bus. So you want to either have a filter or you can buy tap water or spring water at the store, or go to a natural spring and get it. So I've crushed that up real good. There's a lot more water in it now than there was a couple minutes ago.
Okay, so we're gonna get this. Hopefully this will be the right size jar. I don't know if it will be or not, but we're gonna go for it.
That's a quart. If it's not, we'll just switch it over into the pint.
Yeah.
Because they have to be a wide mouth. Yes. Now this is very delicate. Makes me do it over the bowl so that I don't get it over the counter. If any of you have ever come to the synagogue while I'm gardening, you'll know that I am very actively involved and get very, very dirty. You want the brine in there too?
It smells great too.
So kind of like that clear thing that we were using over there. She's going to tamp it down.
Yep. Yeah, this actually looks really good. It smells great.
It does. It's caraway seed. Can you guys smell it?
Yeah, it smells really good.
It smells like a Reuben.
Yeah.
It does. It's nice. I'm like, what is that smell? It smells like a Reuben.
So we tamp that down really well, and then Rachel's going to add the brine that's in the bowl, which actually, it did really well. It made a pretty decent amount of brine.
Lisa Herbert had to go.
Aw.
Hi, Lisa, Herbert. Okay.
So yeah.
And so again, you want to have, we definitely want some brine above of the cabbage, and so I just made a little bit extra.
That's just salt and water.
And that's just salt and water. So a cup of water and 1 teaspoon. Rach, did we have a little spatula or something?
A little spatula?
Yeah.
No.
I'm just going to mix this because this, even though it's really fine grained salt, it does take a little while. It could take a little while to dissolve. So we'll do that, and we'll kind of gently pour it. Next time we do this class, I'm going to have those little weights because those are slick.
That will not be next week.
So again, you want to have, you want to leave a couple inches from your, from the vegetables that you're fermenting and the top of the jar. And then this, our favorite doohickey, kind of slides in.
Never trust me with these pieces. Actually, I never trust myself with these pieces.
And so that'll just help hold the vegetables and things like that. So then, let me get a paper towel. I think we.
Okay, so we have the, so that Mary doesn't do what she did last time, you can kind of hold that seal in when you first start the thing going in.
You want to wipe the rim.
And so I started it in while I held against the seal, and then I'm just putting my fingers around so that can go through.
So that's going to go in so that the I don't know if there's a name for it, but the point of that with this chamber is about 1/2 inch or so through that seal.
If you can see on the end, there's little spaces that the air can get through. There's little like triangles so that the air can come out.
You definitely don't want this part. You don't want that touching the brine or the vegetables or anything like that. So that goes on top. You want to, this one you want to seal tight. There's a little space on these lids to actually write in Sharpie the day that you start it. This goes upside down over this chamber there, and then we're gonna fill this with water about halfway. And again, you'll get that exchange once the gases start to get built. So we fill that about halfway up.
John wants to know if that's an airlock chamber.
That is an airlock chamber.
Is.
Thank you, John Tipping.
Some of Mary's science friends from college.
Here's a little booklet. The
My
booklet
friends too.
has a grate. Then this little cap has very small holes that once this gets going are going to allow some of the gas to escape, but no air to come into the mason jar, right?
So this is in the booklet that we have. And again, I like put them in the Word document that we'll send out that came with the things.
And so that's sort of how it looks, right? We've got a little extra room there. And we've got this sealed up.
You can really see the difference in color in just a day.
So this is even, this is just a day. I guess I'll move those back. So this is the one that we did, which is probably a disaster now because someone, I won't mention any names, kind of knocked it over, but this is sort of, it starts really quickly. And again, by the time, this is going to ferment 2 weeks. That's why you want to put the date on top. And you want to put this someplace that's cool, preferably out of, you don't want it in direct sunlight or anything like that. So cooler part of your kitchen if you can. And then in 2 weeks, it should be ready to go. You just open it up, mix it up. And again, what we usually do with ours is we'll actually hot pack it or can it. So then you can store it at room temperature and it'll last a little bit longer, or just take it out, mix it up, put it in another mason jar or Tupperware container, seal it up and put it in your fridge and use it right away. It'll be ready to go in 2 weeks, ready to eat. So this is really fun. We have, we're doing so great. We have like 20 seconds left until the pickles are done processing. So we'll go ahead, head back over, and then we'll take those out and we're ready to wrap up.
Timer's going off right now. So you'll notice you can get these little handles to stand up, which is great. Some of them fold down really easily and you got to kind of fish them out of there. But I'm going to have Mary do that because, again, I dropped things. A little closer. Okay. See how the handles stick up nice there?
So if you have the space, which we do here at Temple, which is awesome, you can either put this here and individually take the jars out, or if you have a safe space or countertop where you can pull these out, you can do that. And then you're going to take this particular tool, right? It's got silicone here, and then you can pick up your jars individually and just put them on, a safe surface because they're very hot.
And you don't want to put them right on your counter because they'll crack.
Exactly.
Yeah. Stainless steel counter, kind of cold. They will crack.
I don't know why this one's but so what's going to happen as these cool and the lid kind of retracts, you're sort of going to be listening for that popping sound, which takes these types of lids, and where you'll see there's sort of a little bit of a the lid is sort of sitting up a little bit in the middle as they
back. And
this contracts. You hopefully will hear a popping sound, and that sort of seals it. And then these can be stored at room temperature.
Look, one already did. It just didn't. Oh no, it's not. It looks like it.
With pickles and things like this that have these spices, what's neat is that over a little bit of time, the spices really. Oh, there
one.
One. Yeah. So this one here already sealed as it's cooling. If they don't seal, if they come to room temperature and they haven't sealed, then you definitely want to put them in the refrigerator and eat those first. If they do seal, then those can be stored at room temperature. You want to write the date on top because, again, different foods after you can them will really be safe for different amounts of time. Sometimes it's a few months, typically maybe a couple months, 6 months, things like that.
Another good reason for dating them, well, if you're making a mix, like we want to put bread and butter pickles on there, so we know, like we can tell by looking at them. But if you end up, like sometimes we'll store granola or something in a can like that with a lid on it. We use the used lids, and so they get thrown in the dishwasher and whatnot, and it's like, wait, is this a new one or a used one? If it has writing on it, then we know that it's been used. So
Right. Yeah, because remember, you don't, once you use these for canning and they've sealed, you absolutely don't use them again. You always have to buy new lids. You can reuse the rings, but you always want to buy new lids for your canning. You can reuse the jars. Also, it's really good when you're washing everything before you're ready to start canning. Check the rims of the jars that you're using. If there's any cracks or chips in them, you definitely want to recycle those. Get rid of those because then you won't get that really good seal.
And the other thing is, once they seal and they come to room temperature, when you go to store them, you can take the rings off. They don't have to be stored with the rings on them. You can put the rings somewhere else in a nice cool, dry place.
That was a weird thing when we started canning together because my mom and my parents, when they canned, never took the rings off. And then the first time, the first time we were canning together and the first batch was done, she said, okay, we can take the rings off. And I was like, no, you can't take the rings off. Typically
it didn't end our marriage.
It
so
didn't.
It's okay.
It didn't. But I typically leave them on also because, then everything stays together and you have matching lids and rings after you wash them. Then we put those together. We put those away for the season or when we're not canning. And then you have to go hunting for both things. But it's true you can take those off because, again, you've got that really good seal on there.
Yeah, the ring's not holding it on anymore. It's just holding it. It's keeping it airtight until the seal happens.
Okay. Look at us. It's 8:30. Any last questions? This was really fun. Thank you guys for, taking some time out tonight. If anybody has any other questions or anything.
There went another one. Can you guys hear them?
I'm glad that they're popping. I wasn't sure we could hear it.
Yeah. That's what we were kind of hoping that we could get. A lot of times the littler ones will pop faster than, when my mom always wants us to take a pint because she really likes them. So we'll give her a pint when we do this.
Some of you may get these as Christmas presents. You are.
Well, interfaith couple.
So anybody, wait, Rachel and Mary, thank you so much for doing this. It was really awesome. I want people to know that our class that was scheduled for next week, which was George Arnold teaching us how to smoke salmon and make lox, is going to be postponed probably till the spring because George got COVID and he's fine, but it's just got a little too complicated. So the next one will be after Thanksgiving. We're going to do, Rabbi Perman is going to do soups and I'm going to make cookies. And so that's how we'll end this series. So again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Rachel and Mary. And we will talk to everybody later.
Thank you. Yay.